please, I will start with Amelia, if it's okay, so it's not so, and later I will go with Anja, Adelina, and finish with Haydeé. Is that okay with you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Amelia, could you share, please?
Oh, so we're doing it for everybody?
Yes, you are doing for everybody this time. So we don't have problems with rooms. It's much better and faster.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the second part of the event, I suppose, to the Zoom portion of the event. My name is Amelia, and I am a learning advisor at Kanda University of International Studies. And I'm going to be talking about how my job is to help students to talk through some of the issues that they're experiencing. And in particular, this semester, one of the main issues that they've been experiencing is how to learn online. Now, Japan is often considered to be a very technologically advanced country. However, a lot of our students are not actually all that familiar with online learning or technology in general. And so there are a number of different issues that they have been facing. And I will be talking about that today. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by the people coming into the room. Okay, so a little bit of context about Kanda University of International Studies, otherwise known as QUIS. We are a foreign language university. We are located in Chiba, Japan. There are a number of different languages that we offer at our university, English being one of them. However, we also offer languages such as Spanish, Portuguese, Korean, Chinese, Vietnamese, Thai, Indonesian, and I think that's all. We also have students who come from other countries to Japan to learn Japanese, and that is our BECA department. And we also have departments for business and international communication. English classes are compulsory for the first 2 years, and a lot of our students do take these English classes in our self-access learning center, which you can see part of as the background to this particular slide. Our online learning started in April, and the teachers and the learning advisors had about a month to prepare for the challenges that were going to be ahead of us. In terms of the learning advisors, and I am one of them, our home is the Sulk. There are 12 learning advisors, and we do come from relatively diverse backgrounds. We offer advising in a number of different languages. However, most of our advising is done in English. Our job is to support our students in becoming confident, successful, self-directed learners. And we do that through conversations with them. These conversations usually last about 30 minutes. Sometimes they can last longer, sometimes they can last for a little shorter. Our approach to language advising is based in sociocultural theory, and it's informed by some of the strategies and practices suggested in Meinard and Cato's book, which there will be a reference to at the end of this presentation. We are also currently exploring self-determination theory and looking at how self-determination theory can help us to understand our students, but also understand the context of advising as well. I've only been a learning advisor for about 2.5 years. However, I do take pretty extensive notes, and that has not changed in the past semester. From the notes that I take from my advising sessions, I found that there are about 5 main themes that keep cropping up when talking about online learning difficulties. So the first one of those is a lack of confidence. Our students do lack confidence in using technology, and they lack confidence in having conversations over technology as well. They feel a sense of disconnection from their peers, especially the first year students. The first year students have never set foot on campus. They have never met their peers face to face. And as we all know, not everybody likes to show their camera screen. So some students might not have even seen the faces of their classmates. And all of this makes it very difficult to maintain a conversation. We know when speaking online, lag issues, technology issues, as we have experienced today, makes communication quite difficult. So maintaining a conversation is one of those big issues. Finding resources online is another key issue that comes up in advising sessions. The students can go to the SALC when it's open generally, but due to the current situation, they cannot visit the SALC. So they do not have access to the books, they do not have access to the DVDs, they do not have access to us as easily, nor to each other, because in our SALC we do have what's called learning communities, and these are communities of students who share a similar interest, and this is very popular with our student population. So they don't have access to these, and they don't know how to find similar resources online either. And as a result of all of the above, it is very hard for our students to maintain their motivation. So these are the 5 key issues that I have found looking back at my advising records. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present 2 very short cases, and these are examples of, and if everyone could turn on their mute, that would be fantastic. So these examples are based on comments pulled from a lot of my advising sessions with students. They're just going to be examples, and I'm going to be using them to highlight what a session might look like with one of my students and how we might deal with their particular issues. So the first, there we go. So the first case that I have here, this usually takes place in a Zoom classroom, or it takes place at the incredibly popular yellow sofa. Now, the yellow sofa is a virtual yellow sofa where students and teachers can meet and have conversations. Usually, these conversations can happen among students to the side or everybody together. In a Zoom environment, it's very difficult for separate conversations to happen at the same time. And so we run into issues of students who know each other will dominate the conversation, or students who don't feel confident speaking in English might have a Japanese conversation. And so it's very hard for conversations to be maintained and for them to be interesting to all participants. Of course, Zoom rooms could be used, but it's up to the individual teachers to organize that particular solution. But because they can't talk to each other individually, separately in small groups, this also makes it very hard for them to feel connected to each other and sometimes to feel connected to the teacher as well. So that's a quick summary of some of the problems that they're facing. So if a student comes to me with these kinds of problems, I generally start all my advising sessions off with open-ended questions. So tell me, what's life been like? How's your week been? What's been happening with you? And by asking these questions, I allow the student to dictate the direction of the conversation. And generally, they have come to me for a very specific reason. They have something on their mind that they want to talk about. And so it starts that dialogue. When they start talking about their problems, I'll ask them, well, how do you feel about that? Why do you think that is happening? And from this, we can get a deeper look at what is the actual issue, because sometimes what they think the issue is not always what the issue actually is. So we've identified the issue. through our conversations. And what generally happens next is I will ask them to flip their perspective. So in this case, where there are students dominating the conversation in Japanese, I might ask them, well, if your friend came to you with this problem, what advice would you give to them? If you're a teacher, what advice would you give to your student who is having this problem? And from those questions, they start thinking about their own solutions. And for each of the solutions that they come up, I ask them, how do you feel about that? Do you feel comfortable with it? Yes or no? If they feel comfortable with it, they might then write down what their solution is. For example, this. If they don't feel comfortable with the solution, we throw it away and we don't bother talk about it in that session. And so this goes through a bit of a cycle. We come up with an action plan, and once we've got a few ideas down, we start thinking about, well, which ones of these would you like to try after this session? And that gives them something that they can do immediately. It gives them something they can take action on, which makes students feel very capable. Generally, on a Zoom chat, what we would do is we would use Google Docs to write down some of their ideas, or we would use the whiteboard function. It gives them something very physical or tangible that they can refer back to, but it also provides them with some evidence that they are actually capable of coming up with their own solutions to their problems. So the second case that I'm going to look at very quickly is one that is often found in the Zoom classrooms. So in addition to the problems I mentioned earlier about them feeling disconnected to their peers, and them feeling not so confident to talk online, they might also encounter other issues. Yes, lack of confidence was one of those issues. So talking online, as we all know, is difficult. They don't want to talk over each other. They don't want to misunderstand what has been said by somebody, therefore contributing to an awkward situation. They don't want to accidentally insult other students online either. And so all of this contributes to silence in the classrooms. Generally, our students, they expect the teacher to direct the conversation. So when they're put into breakout rooms and the onus is on them to take charge of the conversation, nobody's sure of what to do. Nobody's sure of what role they should be playing. And so silence occurs. And as a result, it's very difficult for them to maintain their motivation. They don't know why they're attending classes if they can't even speak in English in those classes. And if they can't speak in English in their classes, then they need to find resources that are outside of their classroom. But again, as I mentioned, they might not know where to find those resources, and they might not know how trustworthy those resources are. So those are some of the issues associated with this particular case. So with students who are experiencing these kinds of problems, again, starting with open-ended question, and then asking for more elaboration. With issues such as silence in the classroom, there's a number of factors that could be influencing the silence. So I need to know more details. What's the discussion topic, for example? Because what the discussion topic is could contribute to the silence. If it's a topic they've never thought about, of course, they're going to be silent. However, if it's simply there's one student dominating the conversation and so everybody else feels afraid to talk, then that's a separate issue. Once I know a little bit more about the actual situation, I might then make the decision to challenge the student, especially with things like silence. I'll ask them, well, whose responsibility is it to maintain the conversation? Usually they'll say the teacher, but in a breakout room, they have to think about whose is it? Is it theirs or is it their partner's? And this can sometimes go two ways. Students will either accept the responsibility for maintaining the conversation, and then from there, we'll create an action plan for how they're actually going to maintain the conversation, how they're going to encourage their peers to contribute to the conversation. However, sometimes they deny the responsibility for maintaining the conversation. And so that leads the discussion in a very different direction. And this is where we start talking about online resources. So we start looking for different places for them to have English conversations. And this is more often or not where I give them some suggestions and they tell us or tell me whether or not those resources would suit their aims and their needs. And again, from there, we work out an action plan, finding out which one works best for them and summarizing it in a Google document or on the Zoom whiteboard. Yes, okay. So those are my two very short cases and very quick breakdowns of how I would deal with those particular issues of online learning difficulties. So my takeaways, my final comments is firstly, talking to students is really, really rewarding. I'm sure as you all know, especially when life is being disrupted, we need to vent. Part of my job is being there as someone that they can vent to and that they can feel safe venting to. The sharing of thoughts and feelings and experiences is incredibly essential, and they need to be able to talk to somebody that they trust, and sometimes that is a teacher or a learning advisor. And so by having these opportunities for students to talk to people that they trust, it also gives them an opportunity to start thinking about their own learning and what they're doing to take control of their own learning. By teachers and learning advisors asking the right questions or challenging perhaps their beliefs about how they're learning in an online environment, students can start finding their own solutions, and this does help them to develop their capacity to be an autonomous learner, to take control of their own learning. And the last point that I want to make, which I think is very important, is that we do need to challenge our students' beliefs. Especially my students, they often have a tendency to underestimate their ability to find their own solution. They might not be used to it because they've been shown what they need to do from the beginning of high school all the way through till their graduation. And so it can take time for them to develop the confidence to take control of the situation, to seek out their own solutions. But it is a very valuable opportunity for them, us having these conversations with them. Whew. Okay, those are all of my references. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amelia. Thank you very much.
I have no idea what I'm saying anymore.
No, thank you very much.
My name is Anja Burkert. I'm based in Graz in Austria, and my presentation is entitled A Technophobe's Journey in Times of Corona. Next slide, please. Okay, so before I start to tell you a bit about what happened over the last few months, I would like to briefly tell you about my teaching context. This is normally on the slide, but I can tell you without the slide. I teach mainly language courses in the English department of Graz University. I teach grammar and EAP. And I also teach at the University of Technology, where I give general English courses. And I've got whole day seminars at the medical universities where I teach medical doctors how to write research papers. And I would like to focus on my courses at the English department because I've got 6 or 7 courses there. So my EAP and grammar courses are actually my sort of main workload. And in the English department, we've got lots of parallel courses, which means that we don't have a lot of flexibility and choice. And we all work with ready-made course handouts, and we more or less work through these handouts during the whole semester, because students have to sit highly formalized exams, and they all have to take the same exam on the same day, the same time. And before I start to talk about my Corona journey, I would like to present to you my priorities in my teaching. That would be on the next slide, please. So my first priority is to establish a supportive and positive classroom atmosphere where my students are involved actively in their tasks, and I always attempt to encourage cooperation rather than competition. And in my teaching, I always also give my students the chance to learn from each other and to always share their thoughts and ideas. And also when I present, for example, grammar points to them, I afterwards tell them to discuss what they've just heard in their groups. Actually, I should say that at the beginning of each class, I always ask the students to arrange the tables in the classroom so that they can all sit in groups of 4. And this, of course, makes a collaborative working possible. And I've got 4 other priorities. They are on the next slide, please, Athenas. So for me, it's also important to reduce my students' anxiety and inhibition when speaking in front of others. And you can imagine that it's easier for students to speak in a group of 4 people than in front of the whole class. And this collaborative work, which is facilitated by the seating arrangement, also helps students to have access to all diverse discourse roles. So my students are not the ones who answer my questions, but they are also the ones who in their groups ask questions, challenge each other's arguments, back up their own arguments, and so on. And of course, as you can imagine, it is vital in a language course to give students enough time to also speak, even in a grammar course, of course. Especially in a grammar course, I would say this is very difficult because teacher presentation, of course, takes up a lot of time. And by having students sit in groups, I also enhance, of course, their speaking time. Okay, so what happened over the last 3 months? The first thing that happened on a Tuesday, it was March 10th, as far as I remember. That is on the next slide, please, Athenas. Thank you. I had an email exchange with a student who I knew from a previous class. And I asked this student if she could come to my office on Wednesday morning and possibly help me to carry over handouts to another room. And the student answered, sorry, Ms. Burkert, I'm very happy to help, of course, but I think this is not going to happen because the university is going to shut down tomorrow. So you can imagine that I was in a state of shock and disbelief, but actually this is what happened. So overnight, the university closed. And a few days later, we all met at the English department. We had a staff meeting where we were told that we are supposed to use the Moodle platform, where we should put content for the students to deal with. We should set them tasks. And our boss at the English department also showed us how to add sounds to PowerPoint presentations. And she said we could maybe try to personalize our teaching a bit by making videos. I did that for the next 10 days or so. And then I got an email from a student who said to me that another of our teachers has just given an online session on WebEx, and he would kindly ask me to do the same. So you can imagine that this was the second shock during a short period of time, because I was not very familiar with technology. So of course I tried to get this WebEx as well. And in the meantime, by chance, I discovered Jitsi. And this was so simple that I immediately fell in love with this tool. And from then on, could you please go back to the previous slide, please? And from then on, actually, I started a few trial sessions. And I asked the students, I said, these are voluntary. I would just like to try out this video conferencing tool. And it's an option or an opportunity for them also to ask questions about everything which we've already dealt with via the Moodle platform. And the students voluntarily attended, and actually everything worked well. And the Monday after that, I started my regular teaching with Jitsi at the regular course times. And this actually then went on until the end of the semester. And after the first lesson, my first synchronous lesson on Jitsi, I got this email, and that is please on the next slide, Atenas. So the same student who had asked me to use another tool, so a video conferencing tool, sent this email to me 5 minutes after the lesson finished. Dear Professor Burkert, you did very well today, especially when taking into consideration that this was one of your first online classes. I just wanted to encourage you to go on as you did, because I liked it very much and it helped me more than I thought it would. I'm really looking forward to Wednesday, 8:15. Have a nice day and enjoy life. Sincerely yours, Jakob. So you can imagine I was really very happy about this email, and I was encouraged and determined to go on like this during the whole semester. So if I look back and describe the 3 phases I had gone through over this semester, the first phase is on the next slide. So at the beginning, I was in total shock, and I was wondering how we are going to manage, because I could not imagine teaching without being present and without being with my students in the classroom. And of course, when putting content or tasks on Moodle, I encountered various technical problems, or actually not I encountered them, my students encountered them. For example, they couldn't open some documents, they couldn't open the videos. So I was faced with a few problems. I was quite insecure, and I thought, well, this semester is going to be a disaster. But when I started teaching via Jitsi, that was the beginning of phase 2, which is on the next slide, thank you. Actually, what followed were a few months of very intense synchronous teaching. I set my students lots of written homework tasks, and they sent me lots of texts. And my problem was actually that I asked all the students in all my 10 courses to send me every text via email. So you can imagine that I simply couldn't catch up with my emails. And all my emails, which then contained corrected texts, actually said apologies for the delay. And then I found out that, of course, there is a folder on Moodle where they can upload their homework texts, and then some kind of order came into this whole chaos. And what I did, and what I assume some of you or most of you also did, I started also video conferencing with my colleagues and also with friends. And this whole phase, actually, which lasted probably more than 2 months, 2 or 3 months, was a really intense phase. The work was very time consuming, of course, but then I was happy to have some work. And I still felt a bit overwhelmed, I have to admit. And for me, as I started dreaming about Google Docs and Google Chrome and Jitsi and WebEx and so on, and this is, I'm not exaggerating, and I know my colleagues had the same experience. For me, this was another confirmation that technology is not good for your mind and body. But then, strangely enough, phase 3 started, and I got sort of settled into this routine of synchronous teaching. I have to admit that I hugely enjoyed it. And then something weird happened. My best friend, Christian Ludwig, a total technophile who always knows an answer, especially when it comes to technology, asked me for advice. He asked me whether I could show him how to use Jitsi. And for me, that was a moment in my life that I will never forget. And also I took part in an interactive online conference. And there I was asked to be present in the breakout room and moderate the session and so on. And I have to admit that I would never have wanted to do this before the Corona crisis had started, because I would have been simply overwhelmed with the technology. And actually it went very well. I felt secure, I felt really fine, so everything went well. And I was quite proud of myself, I have to admit. So the bottom line of phase 3 is that I highly appreciate the existence of these video conferencing tools, especially. I'm very grateful that they do exist, that I was able to do my teaching, that I was able to see and hear my students during the whole semester. That was really fantastic. And I'm also now much more curious to try out new technological tools. I wouldn't have liked to do that before because I was very happy with pen and paper. And also my self-confidence has grown in this respect, because I've realized that if I try it and if I want to find out, I can. And first I was not sure about that. I just thought that I was a complete failure with respect to technology. So I would say my current beliefs now, and these are please on the next slide, thank you. My current beliefs are that technology is highly beneficial, especially if they fulfill my teaching priorities. And one of my teaching priorities is really establishing interaction in the classroom. And it's really important to know about the benefits of various tools and also to know how to use them. But I still think that it's not important to use a huge variety of fancy tools just because they are there, because very often I think it's not necessary to use them. But the main benefit of technological tools, in my opinion, is keeping in contact with your students. And on the last screen, I've actually got a few questions which I would have liked to ask in the breakout room, namely if any of you have had similar experiences, and if you could describe the phases you went through, maybe with adjectives, and how your attitude towards technology has changed, if it has changed at all. And if you've learned new things, or if you are planning to use some of these tools in your future normal teaching as well. So thank you very much. And I hope I'll find out about a few answers later on when you are supposed to ask questions and I'm supposed to answer them. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Anja, very much. Yes, probably they can start answering the questions on the chat, and probably at the end they can share some of them, the ones who are willing to. So thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. My name is Adelina Ruiz. I'm here in Guadalajara. Cool morning. Okay, so just like we were just hearing from the previous two presenters, we're all talking about the situation that we went through. And so this was my initial question when I started to think about what I would like to talk to you about. it was basically what we went through, and from your texts on the chat, I can see that we pretty much all went through the same situation. For us, it was a question of having to think about how to support our 1,800 students from our language program, our English language program. And in this transition that we had to make, most of these students were face-to-face students. And so for them, not only their English class was going to become a virtual class, but all of their classes at university. And so the question was, how do you help them deal with that? And our answer for that, seeing as how our team of coordinators, well, you can't deal with 1,800 students if you're only 5 people. So the best solution for this was to think and focus on our 41 teachers. And that's how we did our part in this situation. So basically what happened was we were focusing on accompanying these teachers in their process. Just like Anja was just explaining now, for most of them, or for many of them, having to deal with a virtual environment meant having to learn new skills and face fears and, everything that we all went through in this situation. And so being there for them meant that they could have a model of a way of accompanying their own students in their situation as well. Because just like Amelia mentioned as well in her presentation, we might think that young people are very, good at the technology part, but it's not the same, it's not the same to make TikTok videos than to have to deal with a virtual class. So we were all having to deal with this situation. And so we became that bridge between having to help students, but we did it through our teachers. And so let me just quickly, before I take you to what this accompanying means, 3 very short quotes that I particularly like from these various authors. First of all, when we think in terms of autonomy, we have to understand that if a teacher hasn't lived through that experience for themselves, it's very hard for them to imagine what it takes a student to go through it and develop it for himself. So for us here in Mexico, it's difficult for teachers to think in terms of what it takes to develop autonomy, because we ourselves were not educated necessarily with a focus on autonomy. And so you become the type of teacher who doesn't necessarily encourage a lot of autonomy because you were not taught that way. So recognizing your own autonomy as a teacher is a very important first step in helping your own students get to that point as well. And so if you also consider something like this, and now I've realized that Professor Little is here with us, and so it's kind of funny for me to be throwing his words at him here in this little talk, but bear with me, I'm having fun. So language teachers are more likely to succeed in promoting learner autonomy if their own education has encouraged them to be autonomous. Well, since that is not necessarily our case here, it was very important for us to set the stage for our teachers to see themselves learning how to do these things and gaining autonomy for them, so they could understand what it would take their students to go through the same process as they were having to cope with this situation of becoming suddenly virtual students. And so the point was that if we helped our teachers make this change for themselves, we would then in turn be helping our students develop what they needed to cope with the situation. And so, okay, the point was, how can you help then teachers get the experience of what it feels like to be a student, so that they would understand what it would take from them to put the energy into staying focused and learning new stuff and being able to share with their peers so they could build together. And that is basically what accompanying is doing for us. Okay, so what I mean by accompanying is this is an Ignatian principle that we live by in Jesuit institutions, and these are the basic points of what effective accompanying requires. You know, from the point of view of a coordinator working with teachers, this is what I would need to be able to do for them. And in modeling this with the teachers, this is then the expectation of what teachers would be able to do with their students. So as you can see here on the list that I'm sharing here with you, it's based on human connection, you know, it's based on the trust that we build together as a team. So this is what I, as a coordinator, would put an emphasis on in my interactions with the teachers who I'm working with. I start by trusting them, I show empathy, I make sure that I am listening without judgment, and we build together from equal footing, not from a hierarchy of I know more than you do, because especially in this situation, we were all, believe me, pretty much absolutely on the same level. Okay, so what this is supposed to be leading towards is having the person feel validated, respected, believed in, taken into account, listened to, and of course all of that motivates you. So imagine if you work with your team of teachers in creating all of these feelings and they get to see how it's done, then what we're betting on is that then they will be able to replicate that with the students. And we're not just betting on that, we have seen it happen. This semester was very difficult for all of us. And I'm not saying anything that you don't know because you went through the same experiences yourselves. And so having teachers feeling that they could do things, that they could learn new stuff, you know, what is it that they say? You can't teach an old dog new tricks. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. We were motivated, highly motivated to do this. And it then transferred to students being able to cope with the situation as well, because their teachers were showing them the way. All of this is, again, like I was mentioning before, it's part of this Ignatian way of seeing education and life in general. This is actually from leadership principles. You know, it's about encouraging self-awareness, is about making sure that you're there for people, you believe and trust that they can do well, and you make sure that that's what you're aiming for, that you are there for that, to catch them at the right place doing the right thing, because you want to be part of building that for them and with them. And it is also a gift that I think goes further than the, you know, walls of the classroom or the virtual environment. This is something that you take with you for life. It empowers you, it makes you feel that you can do things, because you can do things, because somebody believes in you. Okay, and so what I want to do very briefly now is show you in practice what are the little things that you get to do to make this happen. For example, in my case, in accompanying my group of teachers or the group of teachers under my coordination, these are the points that I would aim to focus on and to make sure that they happened regularly. Since we were not seeing each other, we were contacting the group mostly through WhatsApp as a means of quick connections, also email, and using video conference tools like Zoom or Teams. This is what we made sure that happened regularly, to really transmit this notion of I'm here for you. We are in this together. I am accompanying you in this journey, okay? And so it was about being approachable, not just available. You know, it's not that I will answer your text whenever I can, as quickly as I can, but I'm listening to the question, even though you might think it's a stupid question. It doesn't matter. Ask your question. You are making sure that you're using encouraging, open dialogue at all times. You're touching base with them as a group or individually as needed. You make sure that you're being supportive and encouraging. You're promoting and facilitating collaboration between them as a group. You're asking for and accepting opinions and contributions at all times. You're recognizing achievements as much as possible. You're openly admitting what you don't know and you ask for help. I think this is very important because, especially in this situation, there are a million things that I didn't know. And it was always important for me to say, you know what, I have no idea how to do that. Let's ask Lily, she knows. And if we know who to go to, what is it that they say? It's not what you know, it's who you know that makes a difference. It's also building this sense of community, right? I don't have to be the one who knows this. I just have to be next to someone or know someone who knows this, and they can help us. And the last point here, bottom line, it's about trusting. Trusting that people want to do their best and they're trying their best, and they will succeed. They will get it done because we're all in this together. Okay. And just to wrap it up, I just want to share with you some of the images of the things that we got to see and live through. We had our coordination meetings to touch base. And I really like this picture because they all look so smiley. And we had training sessions that were initially organized by coordination, but they were led by teachers. All these names that you see here next to the times for the sessions, these are teachers in our coordinations who were there to help their peers and answer questions, share knowledge. We also had training sessions that were suggested by teachers themselves. You know, they realized that they needed help with something, and so they got organized, they set up a time, they met, and they worked on what they needed together. And we had the endless messages on WhatsApp. These are two of the chats where I was participating, one for my coordination and another one for the tutors for the language hub. And so we had these type of messages where we made sure that we touched base and we shared what was happening. For example, fellow teachers were sharing tutorials that they created, you know, little things that would be very helpful that we could go back to 1,000,000 times if we got stuck with something. And of course we did the, you know, not every day, but the regular touching base and sharing jokes and being lively about things. Every time that we needed to, we shared our little achievements to make sure that everybody knew, and we were learning from one another. You know, you need to make sure that if you figured something out, you pass the word around so that not everybody had to start from scratch every single time. And the most important part was trying to share this idea of we're all in this together. It's okay. We're working hard. We can do this. We're a team. It's gonna be okay. We will survive this. Alrighty, that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adelina. Thank you very much. A wonderful picture. It has caused a lot of sensation here.
Hi everyone. I'm a teacher at the English department and advisor in the Mediateca, Self-Access Language Center in Alt and at CCH Suriname High School. I'm in charge of the online diploma course for Self-Access Center Advisor and Distance Tutor in the advising module. I'm very happy to be here and I would like to share some thoughts related to what we are going through. Unexpectedly, from overnight, we needed to make decisions about the way we would have to approach remote teaching and learning in the context of COVID-19, to rethink about the challenges of distance learning and the ways in which they have turned into more demanding and complex. It is not only identifying learning profiles and objectives, but also using, proving, and adapting or discarding strategies, materials, and resources. It has to do with self-regulation and developing abilities to learn under the effects of fear, distress, anxiety, and uncertainty. The 21st skills such as empathy, creativity, solidarity, resilience, collaboration, autonomy, flexibility, among others, will be necessary to be adopted and developed by our students to keep on learning confidently, certainly, and surely autonomously. For these reasons, it is convenient to approach some ways to guide our students on how to learn a language, considering these skills and deal with a changing world, on crisis, at the no school, at the self-access, hopefully, and certainly to the distance. Well, I also would like to share a thought by Guy Claxton, an emeritus professor at Winchester University. In the middle of the 90s, he used to say that the first function of education in an uncertain world would be to provide students with the abilities and self-confidence to face uncertainty appropriately. In other words, to provide our students with the capacity for lifelong learning. And well, my topic has to do with this, right? The 21st skills development, the importance of getting ready for uncertainty. I have to say that the beginning of the lockdown, we needed to ask ourselves about the existence of COVID in our country. And we needed to start thinking about the challenges. So by that time, we needed to assume that everything has changed, to understand the new reality, to deal with emotions such as fear, anxiety, nervousness, and so on. And when all of them were under control, we started to set the mind to work, start working, yes, and certain activities, or return to the subjects, yes. And also think about ways to learn remotely, right? We also thought about the importance of language learning autonomy in this new context. And we came to the conclusion that language learning autonomy was, and it is, much more important than ever, because we need to provide our students with efficient communicative skills such as good listening and good writing skills. This mainly related to the academic aspects and related to the the emotional part of the human being, containment, empathy, motivation, and resilience, right? In this context, we started to think about the 21st skills and language learning autonomy. So these 21st skills are focused on the development of healthy, engaged thinker, ethical citizen, and lifelong learning. And these 21st skills have to do with the development of critical thinking, problem solving, cultural, global, and environmental awareness, communication, well-rounded and healthy, lifelong learning, self-direction, and personal management, literacy, creativity and innovation, and collaboration and leadership, right? We may say they are too many, right, to develop, but it is possible. I think it's possible. I just want to mention that Editorial Santillana from Spain has been working a lot on this development of the 21st skills. And here I have a slide related to the work they have been doing with it, right? If you want, you can have a quick look at it, or I can share the presentation so that you can see them carefully, right? So over here, we can see how these 21st skills are divided in what we can call the 4 vital scenarios, or the 4 C's. And we can see there the critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, and communication. Critical thinking has to do with, looking at problems in a way and linking learning across subjects and discipline. Collaboration is related to working together to reach a goal, putting talent, expertise, and smarts to work. Creativity has to do with trying new approaches to get things done, equals innovation and invention, and communication has to do with sharing thoughts, questions, ideas, and solutions, right? If you see here, we are working with 4 important aspects of human being development, that is self-esteem, working in community, working in the academic context, and working for professional development, and of course to have access to work, right? So then it's important to think about some strategies for developing autonomy in distance learning environments. So what do we need to do as advisors? Well, we need to increase the students' awareness on their activity, on their affective motivational state, improve the declarative and procedural knowledge of the student, and encourage knowledge and analysis of the conditions. The important aspect we need to focus on is the development of effective motivational strategies, development of self-planning strategies, self-regulation, and finally self-evaluation strategies. We also need to focus on the dimensions of learning autonomy. So we need to consider this, let's say, process of forming our students in learning autonomy, from apprentice to expert, from technical domain to strategic use of learning procedures, from external regulation to self-regulation in learning processes, from internalization to the externalization of the process followed before, during, and after learning. And motivation strategies are also very important, right? Our student values the ability to learn positively, builds confidence in abilities and skills, identifies emotional conditions, demonstrates intrinsic motivation, identifies learning goals, and it is committed to achieving learning goals. Identifies physical environmental conditions, analyzes tasks conditions, analyzes the most convenient learning, determines the time it takes to meet objectives, formulates a study plan, and becomes aware of the ability to control learning, right? You may ask yourself, well, what do all these have to do with 21st century skills? Well, yeah, in this case, we are talking about one of the most important ones, I would say, lifelong learning, self-direction, and personal management, right? For our students, it's important to have a study planning, because in this, the student evaluates the effectiveness of the plan, analyzes errors, failures, hits, and uses what he or she has learned in formulating the following plan, right? Performance is also important in the process, because the student evaluates, the students in general evaluate performance based on the goals and formulated plan. I was telling you about learning outcomes, and this is related to self-evaluation based on criteria, participation in evaluation processes, and that uses it by giving to work and testing from learning. So communication skills development. The student uses reading comprehension strategies, produces clearly text clearly communicating the message, and reads and interprets audiovisual images. Another important point is the development of the social skills, right? The student is able to join a group, participates by contributing ideas, opinions, and taking requested products. The student is assertive, demonstrates a collaborative attitude, and is capable of solving conflicts that arise. All of these have to do with communication, creativity, and innovation, collaboration and leadership, critical thinking, and problem solving, right? It is also important to inform our students ways to guide them, to guide the students to self-regulate, right? So for this, it's important to guide our students to know the characteristics of the topic or the learning objective they want to achieve, right? Abilities involved in their development, learning objectives, morals and values that regulate each activity, academic success, criterion to analyze progress, and the finality concepts and basic procedures to be developed. Students need a self-regulation guide, and through this, students will ask the following questions. What do I have to do? What will I need to do that? How will I do it? What do I need to know? Who will I talk about it? And how can I know if what I'm doing is correct or not, right? Over here, we can see a self-evaluation layout for techniques and resources. Here you can see that we have a before, while, and after moment, right? Here we can see that advisors and students are working together, right? So I'm going to focus on what the student needs to do, right? So the student needs to identify their learning needs and learning styles. The students need to identify their learning objectives and analyze and choose the appropriate resources. Focus, now I'm talking about the one moment, focus on the aspects they have progressed, identify and name the strategies, and in the after moment, say if they accomplished the learning objectives, analyze how effective was the selection, and use some strategies to accomplish their learning objectives. Well, to finish, I just want to say that it is important to develop these 21st skills in autonomy learning, because students are able to identify and choose the appropriate strategies, believe in their ability to develop ways to learn, be conscious about the responsibility over their own learning, be confident about their abilities to learn, congratulate themselves for achieving goals, choose suitable resources to learn, face failure positively, make bonds and learn collaboratively. Students are motivated to take risks, say how they feel about challenges, speak about what they don't like and need, and understand the way others feel and learn. I just want to share with you pretty fast some resources that I found really interesting for preparing this topic. Thank you. Thank you very much.
How long have you been doing this Zoom conversation practice at the university, Amelia?
Okay, so Zoom conversation practice, if you're talking, and I think this was Lily's question, if you're talking about the yellow sofas, that has been something that has started since we went online, which was April the 27th. So advising has been online since April 27th, and so have the yellow sofa conversations. Students can access the yellow sofas basically all day, from about 10 o'clock until about 5 o'clock. The teachers will work in 1-hour shifts. Each teacher has an individual Zoom room. And in terms of advising sessions, students will make a booking with an advisor, and those advising sessions are for about half an hour each.
Okay, I don't know, is there a question for Adelina, or someone wants to share about Anja's questions?
Yes, I do have a question for Adelina.
Okay.
Karen Luznia asked, how did the teachers organize their sessions to help one another out?
Right. This was done very organically, actually. For example, in our case, in the group of teachers that I coordinate, we would be having a chat in WhatsApp, you know, and somebody would throw a question. How do you do this in Canvas? Or how do you do this breakout room thing in Zoom? And somebody would say, well, you just click here and there. Oh, can you show me? Yes. So why don't we meet? Yes. Do you have time now? Yes. And in that moment, we would make a call through either Zoom or Teams, and anybody who was interested would join. And in that moment, we would click on stuff and learn. And that would be one quick way to do it. Another way it happened was Ileana suggested that she could teach us how to do the breakout room things, and we just said, well, when is a good time? Yes, Tuesday afternoon at 4. Yes, you send a message, anybody who can and wants to learn this, just show up and we'll do it. And they would come. You know, what was that? If you build it, they will come. If you organize it, if you set up the Zoom meeting, they will come. That's how it was, right? It was very spontaneous, and I think that's what made it so motivating to teachers, and it solved problems. It wasn't, you know, oh, let's try and do this because we think you might need it. No, it was from them. You know, they said, can you please help me learn how to do this breakout room thing? Yes, sure, let's do it. And we went ahead and did it that way. That's it.
Thank you, Adelina. Atenas, do you have a question for Anja, I guess, or we can share about the questions about Anja?
Yes, exactly. I was telling Anja on an email that regarding her presentation, more than questions, there were comments. So maybe we could probably focus on her questions to the public, which were, did you have similar experiences? Has your attitude towards technology changed due to the switch to digital teaching? Have you learned new things? And are you planning to use some tools also in normal teaching?
I don't know, probably a person can raise their hand and we can give them, and we can unmute him. Somebody?
Would anyone like to share their experiences in this transition the same way that Anja did with her 3 phases and her discoveries?
Probably, Atenas, you can tell us about it and you can start.
Well, the thing is, for me, it wasn't really a lot of a transition, because different from Anja, I was used to use technology in my classrooms. So the transition was not that rough as many other teachers had it. Also, my students were used to use technology in my classroom. So for them, it was also a smooth transition. But I definitely understand, and I want to emphasize what Anja said, that it's not about technology, but it's about what you want to do in your classroom and your final objective of teaching, and the final objective that you want to reach with your students in terms of learning. So it's not really a matter about what technologies you use or if you use one platform or another, but that you guide them and that you have the possibility to learn from these experiences, so that you can reach to them and that you can
continue doing it.
Okay, thank you.
Anja, would you like to say something about that?
Yes, yes, go on, go on. Okay. Haydeé, I have a question for you, and the question is from Kazuko, and she says, which strategy is more challenging among these? Do you think it has a root? Your mic is closed. Your mic.
Okay. Well, I don't know. The thing is that we are learning. We are learning, and we are going through a series of challenges. I think that we need to go over each of them and see which one may work better with our students. Yeah, that's what I can tell you now.
Thank you, Haydeé. Probably you can write it because we have some problems with the sound. And
Sure.
Lourdes,
Yes.
Could you please open your mic, please?
Well,
You have
I would to tell you, I have the my experience was a little bit like Anja. I was really I was used to use technology. That was not the problem, but the problem was to face this crisis, which was really very, very hard because it was not only technology, but it was it was also to deal with people who had no very good space to connect, even if they had the computer or the technology. They had no space in their home to be free to connect or to take a class or whatever. So, or even ourselves as teachers, in the classroom, you have your own space, your own time. Everything is yours. But when you have to challenge with all this technology all the time, all day long, with the students which have also the same problems. I mean, they have a lot of classes online. This is really very hard. I think it is not, I mean, the technology, I think it's not the main point. The point is how to deal with people who is living in crisis. So I think we have to look strategies, not only to understand or to be able to use technology, but also to how to say, to pay attention on how these people are or how we are emotionally, socially. I mean, well, my English is not that good, but I hope you understand my point.
Okay. Thank you, Lourdes. Then we have had some comments. We have probably another question for Amelia. Adelina has already answered, I think, some of the questions. So I will go to Akemi's questions that says, in the first case, it's for Amelia. When you say drop from the yellow sofa, does the student has to go out or he has to restrain himself from participating to avoid domineering the conversation?
So I believe that was in relation to the first case that I offered in my presentation. One of the students' solutions to their issue was leaving the yellow sofa. And so in that case, yes, it means that they would physically log out of the Zoom conversation. In terms of restraining themselves from participating in the conversation, this student that I was talking about didn't feel like they were dominating the conversation, but that other students were dominating the conversation. I haven't had any students come to me say that they felt like they were the ones dominating the conversation. I don't think some students might have that awareness, but I think a lot of the time people are just so happy to be talking that they don't realize that they're actually taking away opportunities from other people. However, a number of students do make comments about feeling worried that they will take up too much time because of their English skills rather than them dominating the conversation. So they feel like they might take 5 minutes to say what they want to say simply because they're taking the time to think of the grammar and to think of the vocabulary. And as a result, they don't want to join the conversation. They don't want to put other people in that situation where they have to wait and wait and wait. I hope that answered your question.
Okay, thank you, Amelia.